Most people think of four-wheel drive capability as something that belongs on a truck, something with a ladder frame, a solid axle, a high-clearance body, something that announces what it is before it even moves. The vehicles on this list disagree. These are wagons, estate cars, family haulers, practical everyday transport that were engineered with four-wheel drive systems serious enough to embarrass purpose-built off-roaders. Some of them were military contracts in civilian clothing. Some were motorsport technology filtered down into school-run cars. Some were simply the result of engineers who refused to accept that a family wagon had to be limited to tarmac. 10 vehicles, all wagons, all overbuilt. This is their story. Number 10. Toyota Corolla wagon, 1988 to 1992. You know the Corolla. You have seen a million of them on every road, in every country, in every decade since the 1960s. Sensible, dependable, completely ordinary. That reputation is exactly why this entry belongs at the start of this list. Because what Toyota did quietly to the Corolla wagon in 1984 is one of the most understated engineering decisions of the decade. In 1988, Toyota added a part-time four-wheel drive system to the Corolla wagon. Not a concept, not a special edition, not a limited run for mountain rescue teams or government fleets. A floor-mounted transfer case, a rear drive shaft, and a proper lockable four-wheel drive system, fitted to the same car your neighbor used to ferry children to school and carry groceries home on Saturdays. The engineering was deliberate rather than showy. Toyota overspecified the drivetrain for the vehicle's weight class, using components sized for a heavier vehicle entirely. This meant the system operated well within its design limits during normal use, which translated directly into longevity. On light trails and snow-covered mountain roads, it worked without drama, without requiring the driver to stop, without breaking down. These were sold across Japan, Europe, Australia, and export markets for 8 consecutive years. Alpine commuting, rural delivery routes, farm access roads, utility runs in conditions where a conventional two-wheel drive wagon would have stopped. For 4 years, Toyota sold the Corolla four-wheel drive wagon without materially changing the drivetrain engineering, because there was no reason to change it. The system worked. Parts were inexpensive. Any dealer with a basic workshop could service it. In a period when manufacturers were positioning four-wheel drive as a premium feature on expensive vehicles with premium price tags, Toyota put the identical capability into the most affordable wagon in their lineup. The Corolla four-wheel drive wagon is not the most impressive vehicle on this list by any single engineering measure. What makes it extraordinary is the combination of volume and intention. Toyota built tens of thousands of these and sold them to ordinary people who needed four-wheel drive capability but could not justify the cost of a truck. That philosophy, serious capability in accessible packaging, specified properly, priced honestly, is what overbuilt engineering looks like when it reaches the people who actually need it. Number 9. Subaru Outback, 1994 to 1999. Before the Outback became the default transport of hiking trails, organic food markets, and weekend camping trips, it was something genuinely radical. The first time a volume manufacturer had deliberately over-engineered a family estate wagon for sustained use beyond the sealed road, and then priced it within reach of ordinary buyers. The first generation launched in 1994 as a raised variant of the legacy estate wagon. Subaru took their proven full-time, symmetrical, all-wheel drive system, raised the ride height by approximately 80 millimeters compared to the standard legacy wagon, added plastic cladding around the wheel arches, and produced something that had no direct equivalent anywhere in the market. The critical engineering detail was what sat underneath, and crucially, what Subaru chose not to do. They did not simply fit spacers to the existing legacy suspension to achieve the ride height gain. They recalibrated the springs and dampers specifically for the new geometry, maintaining suspension travel and handling integrity at the higher ride height, rather than accepting the body roll and instability that cheaper lift conversions invariably produce. The all-wheel drive system was permanent and symmetrical, equal-length drive shafts to all four wheels, a viscous coupling center differential that distributed torque continuously without any input from the driver, and a self-leveling rear suspension arrangement that maintained geometry under load. On mud, snow, wet tarmac, or loose gravel, it worked without hesitation and without the driver needing to engage anything. The capability was simply present at all times, requiring nothing from the driver to activate it. Competing systems of the same era required engagement switches, experienced lag under slip conditions, or operated in front-wheel drive by default, and only added the rear axle reactively. The first-generation Outback outsold conventional estate wagon competitors in the United States and in Australia, almost from launch. Buyers who had spent years choosing between the practicality of a wagon and the capability of a truck suddenly had a vehicle that offered both, at wagon pricing, with wagon running costs, and with estate car interior space. Every crossover, every raised ride estate, every soft roader sold anywhere in the world today is a consequence of this vehicle. The manufacturers who followed were not creating something new. They were copying something Subaru had already demonstrated was viable, at volume, in the market, a decade or more before most of them committed to the concept. Number 8 put rally car engineering directly into a family estate. Here is what that looked like. Number 8. Audi 100 Avant Quattro, 1983 to 1991. The Audi Quattro rally car receives all the attention it deserves. The turbocharged coupe, the snow stages, the dominance, the reputation that permanently changed what all-wheel drive meant in competitive motorsport. You know the story. What most people have missed is what Audi did the following year. They placed that same permanent four-wheel drive architecture into a full-size executive estate wagon and sold it to corporate fleet buyers and families who wanted a sensible car with a large boot. The 100 Avant Quattro entered production in 1983. The drivetrain architecture was directly derived from the Quattro coupe, a manually lockable center differential providing a 50-50 torque split under normal conditions, permanent drive to all four wheels, and no system requirement for driver input to maintain traction in ordinary adverse conditions. The bodywork was the long wheelbase 100 Avant, a formal, slightly conservative executive estate, with seating for 5 and a boot volume that made it genuinely useful for families, commercial travelers, and anyone needing to carry substantial loads regularly. From the outside, it was entirely unremarkable in appearance. Underneath it was running engineering that Audi had spent years and considerable competition development budget refining. The practical effect in Northern European winter conditions, where the 100 Avant Quattro sold in the largest numbers, was substantial. Competitors of equivalent size and price offered either rear-wheel drive systems that were hazardous on ice, or part-time four-wheel drive arrangements that required the driver to stop the vehicle and physically engage a lever before the capability was available. The Quattro system required nothing. You drove the vehicle in exactly the same manner, regardless of surface conditions. The drivetrain managed the rest. Audi sold the 100 Avant Quattro for 8 years, without the market fully understanding what it represented. An executive estate car with rally-derived permanent four-wheel drive, priced for corporate buyers, was something that had never existed before, and would not be widely replicated for another decade. The gap between the car's appearance, conventional, conservative, thoroughly ordinary in its visual presentation, and its actual engineering specification, remains one of the most extraordinary mismatches in the history of the estate car. Number 7. Toyota 4Runner Wagon, 1984 to 1989. The first generation Toyota 4Runner did not begin as a wagon. It began as a truck, and that distinction is the reason it belongs on this list, ranked above vehicles that were designed as passenger cars and subsequently fitted with four-wheel drive systems. Toyota took the Hilux pickup platform, one of the most extensively tested, most widely deployed, and most consequentially proven commercial vehicle platforms in production history, and constructed a wagon body on top of it. The initial 1983 concept used a removable fiberglass canopy over the Hilux load bed. By 1984, Toyota had refined this concept into a full steel-roofed wagon body with a proper interior, 5 seats, and the appearance of a conventional estate vehicle. The platform underneath retained the Hilux-derived ladder frame and part-time four-wheel drive system with a 2-speed transfer case, providing a full low-range crawler gear. The 1984 and 1985 models came with a solid front axle, the configuration most valued by serious off-road operators today. From 1986, Toyota switched to independent front suspension, improving on-road stability while maintaining the off-road geometry that defined the platform. This is the critical engineering distinction. Every car-based four-wheel drive vehicle in this era, and most of those sold today, was built on a passenger car platform, subsequently modified to accept a four-wheel drive drivetrain. Those platforms were designed to provide comfortable, efficient transport on sealed roads, and the four-wheel drive systems fitted to them were designed to extend that operation into mild adverse conditions. The 4Runner's platform had been designed from its inception to handle sustained use in genuinely hostile terrain under commercial operating conditions, with no tolerance for mechanical failure in the field. The crawler gear ratios, structural integrity, and off-road geometry were specified for mining operations, agricultural use, and military deployment, not for occasional snow. When Toyota placed a wagon body over that platform, none of the engineering underneath changed. The low-range transfer case ratio remained. The solid front axle geometry remained. The structural specification that allowed the platform to operate under full load on unpaved tracks remained intact. The 4Runner simply gained seats, a roof, and an interior. In the United States, it established an entirely new benchmark for compact four-wheel drive wagons. In Australia, it was marketed as the Hilux Surf, a name that more honestly acknowledged the platform it sat on. The first-generation 4Runner is the direct mechanical forefather of the modern sport utility vehicle segment. Number 6 created the all-wheel drive family estate, before the segment had a name. Using Jeep engineering nobody copied for a decade. Number 6. AMC Eagle Wagon, 1980 to 1988. Before the sport utility vehicle segment existed as a market category. Before the crossover had been named. Before any established manufacturer had publicly committed to the idea of a family estate car with permanent all-wheel drive. American Motors Corporation built one, put it into dealerships, and found buyers within the first year of production. The AMC Eagle launched in 1980. The concept was straightforward in its intention and genuinely original in its execution. American Motors took the Concord Estate Wagon, a conventional full-size family car body with a long roof, substantial boot space, and seating for 5. Fitted a Jeep-derived permanent all-wheel drive system underneath it, raised the suspension to provide additional ground clearance, and produced a vehicle that occupied a market position that did not previously exist. It was not a truck. It was not a conventional passenger car. It was a family estate wagon that could be driven from a sealed road onto an unpaved track, through standing water, over loose gravel, and up gradients that would stop a two-wheel drive vehicle, without the driver stopping, without engaging a lever, and without switching anything. The drivetrain was a genuine Jeep engineering product. AMC owned Jeep at this point, and had full access to the four-wheel drive architecture. The system used a new process model 119 transfer case, providing permanent drive to all 4 wheels via a viscous center coupling, front and rear drive shafts, properly engineered differentials at both axle ends. The 4-wheel drive engagement was always active, always distributing torque, completely transparent to the driver in normal operation. You purchased the Eagle, you drove the Eagle, and the Eagle went where you pointed it. including places that competing vehicles from the same showroom could not follow. AMC offered the Eagle in multiple body styles, including sedan, hatchback, and the full estate wagon that concerns this list, roof rack provision as standard equipment, full estate proportions, ground clearance adequate for unpaved roads, and a stance that communicated what the vehicle could do without advertising it loudly. Chrysler acquired AMC in 1987 and continued Eagle Wagon production through the 1988 model year before discontinuing it entirely. Number 5. Toyota Land Cruiser FJ55 Wagon, 1967 to 1980. Some vehicles are built with a specified service life. The Toyota Land Cruiser FJ55 was built without one, and the operating record of the examples that went to work in the 1960s and 1970s reflects that decision more clearly than any specification sheet could. Toyota launched the FJ55 in 1967 as the full-size estate wagon variant of the Land Cruiser range, which had been in continuous production since 1951 and had by this point accumulated extensive operational data from professional use in genuinely hostile environments. The platform underneath the FJ55 was Land Cruiser specification throughout. The F-Series inline-six engine, solid front and rear axles with no independent components to misalign, fatigue, or fail under sustained off-road load, a 2-speed transfer case providing both high and low range with genuine crawler ratios, and body-on-frame construction built to structural tolerances that Toyota had validated through more than 15 years of field operation in mining, military, agricultural, and expedition contexts. Nothing in the underpinning was optimistic. Everything had been proven by professional operators in conditions that expose engineering compromises within weeks. What the FJ55 added to this platform was a full-length estate wagon body with seating for up to 7 passengers, a complete roof structure, substantial rear load capacity, and the interior equipment needed to make the vehicle usable as everyday transport rather than purely as a work tool. Toyota did not build the FJ55 for recreational off-road drivers or weekend enthusiasts. They built it for government agencies, international development organizations, mining and extraction companies, and rural operators across sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, South America, Southeast Asia, and Australia. Organizations that needed to transport personnel and equipment into inaccessible areas on a daily operational basis and could not afford mechanical failure in the field. The specification changed minimally across 13 consecutive years of production. Engine outputs were revised, interior details were updated, but the fundamental mechanical architecture remained consistent because the original design continued to meet operational requirements without modification. Parts interchangeability across Land Cruiser variants meant the FJ55 be repaired in the field, using components sourced from other Land Cruiser models already deployed in the same region. Many of the examples delivered in the 1970s remain in active service. The FJ55 is the longest-lived, mass-produced, four-wheel drive estate wagon in history. Number 4 had fewer than 5,300 examples ever made, almost none in North America, and BMW dropped the system entirely for the next generation. Number 4. BMW 325 iX Touring, 1988 to 1991. BMW did not bring the 325 iX Touring to North America. They concluded that the market had not yet developed sufficient appetite for an all-wheel drive estate car from Bavaria, priced at a premium above the standard model, in a segment that had no established identity in the American market. That commercial calculation meant that one of the most technically sophisticated wagons BMW has ever built spent its entire production life effectively invisible to the world's largest premium car market. The 325 iX Touring was the estate body variant of the E33 series, fitted with BMW's iX Permanent all-wheel drive drivetrain, which had been developed from 1985 as BMW's direct response to Audi's Quattro. Dominance in the all-wheel drive market. The system architecture differed fundamentally from Audi's mechanical differential approach. BMW chose viscous couplings throughout, a center differential coupling providing a 37-63 front-to-rear torque split at rest, with the viscous fluid in the coupling, transferring up to 80% of available torque to the axle, with greater traction automatically under slip conditions, and a second viscous coupling in the rear differential, providing limited slip function between the rear wheels. The system required no driver input under any conditions, responded to wheel speed differentials within the natural response time of the fluid coupling, and operated without the electronic intervention that competing systems of the era increasingly depended on. The 37-63 rear bias torque split was not an arbitrary figure. BMW had engineered it to mirror the front-to-rear weight distribution of the E30 under full throttle, preserving the rear-biased handling dynamics that defined the E30 driving character. Adding all-weather all-wheel drive traction without altering the handling balance that BMW customers had bought the car for was the engineering brief, and the iX system delivered it. The touring body translated this drivetrain into a practical context. 5 seats, a proper estate load area, the M22.5-litre straight 6, producing 170 horsepower, and a curb weight under 1,300 kilograms that preserved the handling responsiveness the E30 was known for. Fewer than 5,273 X touring wagons were built before BMW ended all-wheel drive. E30 production when the E36 arrived in 1992. The E36 offered no all-wheel drive option. BMW did not return all-wheel drive to the 3 Series until the E46 generation years later. Find a 325 iX Touring today, and you have something that the majority of BMW collectors and enthusiasts have never encountered in person. The engineering justifies every penny of what they now sell for. Number 3 spent years in development before reaching a customer, and used a 3-stage automatic system nothing else could match. Number 3. Mercedes-Benz 300 TE4 Matic, 1987 to 1993. Mercedes-Benz introduced their 4-wheel drive concept at the 1985 Frankfurt International Motor Show. The system entered production in the W124 series in 1987. That 2-year interval between public presentation and customer delivery is the opening data point in understanding how seriously Mercedes approached this engineering problem. They were not releasing a product until the engineering team was satisfied it was correct in every material respect. Most manufacturers announced and shipped. Mercedes announced and waited until the engineering was right. The first generation 4 Matic was an electronically controlled 3-stage system, representing a different philosophy from anything competitors had built. Under normal conditions, the vehicle operated in rear-wheel drive. When the anti-lock braking system sensors detected wheel slip, the system responded automatically in stages. Rear axle differential lock first, then front axle engagement via the center transfer case if slip continued. The entire transition required no driver input and occurred within milliseconds. The driver experienced only the result, traction restored, without any action on their part. This was fundamentally more sophisticated than the manually engaged part-time systems and basic viscous coupling arrangements that competitors were selling at the time. Mercedes had concluded that any system requiring driver awareness and action would inevitably be misused, underused, or engaged too late in rapidly deteriorating conditions. The 4 Matic eliminated the driver from the traction management equation entirely. The car monitored the road surface and responded faster than any driver could. The W124 platform that received this system was already among the most overspecified production cars available. Mercedes had begun W124 development in 1976, with production starting in 1985, after 9 years of engineering work. The body was fully galvanized against corrosion. The multi-link independent rear suspension was a Mercedes-developed innovation that the rest of the industry spent years attempting to replicate. Every mechanical component was specified to tolerances, carrying a design target of 300,000 kilometers of service without major mechanical failure. The 300TE4 Matic placed the most sophisticated electronically controlled all-wheel drive system of its era inside that already overbuilt platform, heavier and more expensive than any competitor, and more capable in adverse conditions than any competitor. Nothing else on sale at the time offered this combination. Nothing else came close. Number 2 was built in even smaller numbers, and the company that re-engineered it normally built military vehicles. Number 2. Volkswagen Golf Country, 1990 to 1992. Volkswagen built 7,722 Golf Country wagons between 1990 and 1992. That number means the vast majority of Volkswagen owners, European car enthusiasts, and automotive historians have never seen one in person. The few who have seen one have almost uniformly failed to understand what they were looking at, because nothing about the exterior of a Golf Country prepares you for what was done to it underneath. The Golf Country began as a concept presented at the 1989 Geneva Motor Show under the internal name Golf Montana. Dealer and advanced customer response was immediate and substantial enough that Volkswagen's management authorized a limited production run, despite the manufacturing process required being significantly more complex than anything Volkswagen's standard production infrastructure could accommodate. The production method they developed with Steyr Daimler Puch was as unusual as the vehicle itself. A standard Golf Synchro was built at the main Volkswagen plant in Wolfsburg, Germany, then loaded onto a transport truck and driven 930 kilometers southeast to the Steyr Daimler Puch facility in Graz, Austria. At Graz, the vehicle was comprehensively re-engineered by a company whose primary business was building military vehicles, Steyr Daimler Puch, responsible for the Haflinger and Pinzgauer military platforms and the G-Wagen four-wheel drive system. They fitted a tubular subframe that raised the Golf body by 120 millimeters. Reinforced springs, recalibrated dampers, and extended driveshaft components were installed for the new geometry. A full-length welded steel underbody protection plate was fitted. Flared composite arch extensions accommodated the wider track. Specific Speedline alloy wheels were fitted as standard. The Synchro all-wheel drive system was retained and adapted to the revised suspension geometry. The completed vehicle was transported back to Volkswagen for final inspection before delivery. The ground clearance exceeded that of many vehicles marketed specifically as off-road capable in the same period. The approach and departure angles were functional rather than cosmetic. The all-wheel drive system engaged without driver input, automatically, via the viscous coupling responding to wheel speed differential. Production ended in 1992. No successor was ever built. The Golf Country remains a categorical demonstration of what specialist military vehicle engineering applied with determination can do to an ordinary family hatchback, in the smallest possible production volume, via a 930-kilometer manufacturing detour, 7,722 units, a 930-kilometer journey to Austria for conversion, and Number 1 created the concept that made all of this possible. Number 1. Subaru Leone Wagon, 1972 to 1994. Every vehicle on this list exists because of a decision Subaru made in September 1972. The Leone four-wheel drive wagon entered the Japanese market in September 1972. Not as a prototype, as a production car, available at Subaru dealerships, priced for buyers who needed a wagon capable of operating in mountainous terrain covering 80% of Japan. Prior to this, four-wheel drive belonged to trucks, military vehicles, and expensive specialist machines like the Jensen FF. The Leone eliminated that distinction. Four-wheel drive in a family wagon, at family wagon prices. The execution was direct. A floor-mounted lever engaged a rear driveshaft through a dog clutch, converting the front-wheel drive Leone into a four-wheel drive vehicle on loose surfaces, snow, and unpaved roads. The engine was a 1.4-liter flat-four producing 66 horsepower. The ground clearance was modest. None of that mattered. What mattered was the principle: a mass-produced estate with a functional, maintainable four-wheel drive system built for people who needed it. The concept had been FF1 wagons, built for the Tohoku Electric Power Company, whose engineers needed vehicles to maintain power lines through Japanese mountain winters. That trial confirmed the approach. The Leone was the production result, launched before the 1972 Winter Olympics in Sapporo. Subaru spent the following 22 years refining what September 1972 started. Part-time became full-time. Manual became automatic. The Leone became the legacy. The legacy became the Outback. And the Outback defined the raised-ride all-wheel drive segment that every manufacturer subsequently entered. The Leone did not just arrive first. It proved the concept worked. At volume, at accessible prices. Everything that followed is the industry answer to a question Subaru asked in 1972. Drop the vehicle you think deserved to be on this list in the comments below. Every vehicle on this list was underestimated. Every one of them proved something the automotive industry took years to fully accept. That four-wheel drive capability does not require a truck. It requires engineering conviction and the determination to apply it to vehicles that ordinary people actually use. The Leone started this conversation in 1972. It is still running. Every time a family wagon handles a mountain road in winter without drama, every time a raised ride estate continues past the point where a conventional car would stop. If you want more forgotten vehicles built to a standard the market never gave them credit for, there is plenty more on the channel. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Drop a like if this list surprised you, and if you think something belongs here that did not make it, the comments are open.